Hey everybody, Dave Hagan here. Today I want to talk about the 17 things that frugal people usually don't do. That's today on the Financial Wellness Podcast.
Welcome to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. Here is your host, financial problem solver and talk show host, Dave Hagan.
Thank you, Nick, and welcome everybody to this week's edition of the Financial Wellness Podcast, coming to you from beautiful downtown Van Nuys. With us today, of course, Mr. Brian Reed.
Howdy, David.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good. You have a good week?
I did.
All right, good stuff. Hey, you know what? Tonight is, I think it's like the Democratic debate or something. Aren't you glad we're here?
It is.
We'll just miss out on all that tomfoolery.
I'll be honest, I'm technically recording it, but I don't know if I'm going to actually watch it.
I might go home and take a look at it too. You never know when it'll flare up. It's kind of like
it's going to be a fight. It's going to be a fight one of these times.
It's kind of like the fires that they have out here. They kind of smolder and then there's a little flare up, and it's starting to get down to the short strokes now. So
somebody's going to say something stupid, and that's going to be it.
Should be good. But I'd rather be here, actually.
Let's knock it out.
Yeah. All right, so everybody, today I want to tell you about an article that I saw on the internet called 17 Things Frugal People Usually Don't Do. And it was on a site called Ladders, and then it was on a website called Perfect Hangover, and the author, Melissa Blivens, I think she writes Perfect Hangover, and so it was on her website. So I want to spend some little bit of time talking about that today. But before we get into that, I want to give a shout out to a class that I spoke at Cal State University, Northridge. It was about 2 weeks ago, and it was a class on consumer behavior, and we spoke about wants and needs, and I was honored, frankly, that y'all would let me come and talk, and more importantly, you even listened, so I thought that was pretty cool. Brian, this class was mostly seniors, and so education was getting pretty real to them. Like next year at this time, they got to have like real jobs, and so they're starting and thinking, and it was a good group, smart group. They had some good questions. A couple of interesting takeaways, because I was there for, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours.
Nice.
First of all, I'm always flattered when I talk and people take notes. I mean, I guess they should. I think I've got really good stuff to say, but when they actually take notes, it's like, God, they're listening. That's pretty cool. A second takeaway was, I got a good a deal of response from them. I could see that there were some things that I was saying that was kind of providing a little bit of spark. A couple of the old favorites, the old standards here from TFWP. People spending 18% less when they spend cash, and money doubling every 10 years at 7%. And some of these things they were writing down, I could see them going, God, I really never knew that. And isn't that kind of the point of it? They also did a grid of needs and wants prior to the time I had to talk, and they were really surprised, I think, how much they started to realize was going out the back door. Mm-hmm. They go, wow, I can't believe how much I spend on clothes or, going out or hanging out or whatever. And so I think it was a complete eye-opening experience. So, hey, thanks to the class for having me. Thanks for listening. Thanks for writing some things down. And thanks to the professor, Jennifer Kaiser, for the invitation. What a gas. It was fun to do. So today we're going to talk about frugality or minimalism. And it's really starting to take off, I think, with Gen X adults and millennials. And, we discussed this in episode 41 last year. So we've been talking about it for a while. Now, frugal people don't usually broadcast to the world and their friends that they're all about being on the budget. And if they're listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast, they're not on a budget. They're on a what, Brian?
They're on a plan.
A spending plan. They're deploying their capital. But it's the same kind of concept, almost just a different way of thinking about it. What they do is they really make small tweaks in their everyday life to ensure their stability, their long-term viability. And I've seen lots of people do this. I've got several friends that have done this. They made some tweaks. They're more sustainable. They're more frugal, I guess. And you don't really notice it. You don't really notice it, but they're able to put a couple bucks beside or put it in the bank, and it's not really even noticeable. I've seen several people do it. And you don't have to sell everything to, live off the grid. I don't think this is about soap scraps and having nothing and having like a sofa in the living room made out of 2x4s and stuff like that. I think it's a little more slight. It's a little more subtle than that. So anyway, here are 17 things from this article that people who are frugal do not do. Now, first, I got to tell you, Brian, I don't like frugal. Frugal sounds like hunched over and old and cranky and
dusty,
and I'm frugal. So I was trying to come up with another word. I don't know, thrifty. What about thrifty? I mean, that's sort of, but not.
I could economical.
Economical. I like that. I like it.
Thrifty, conserving. What about financially focused?
I like that. I like that. Focused. Financially focused.
And, for those extremers, they're fervently financially focused.
FFF, the FFF Club.
Triple Fs.
I like it. You know what word I use for myself? Cheap. Cheap, man. I use it. Some people might consider it negative. I used to tell someone in the office, hey, look, I'm just cheap. And they go, oh, no, you're not cheap. That's not a good word. But, well, I don't know. It's cheap. Cheap isn't bad, I don't think, is it?
No, I like the phrase. I choose how I deploy my capital.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. But, I got to write that down. FFF, financially focus, fervently. I like it. What was the name of that group that we were talking about last season? The FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. I thought that was pretty good, but there's a lot of thinking that goes on beyond that. I guess if you just say, "Look, I'm triple F,"
does that mean that you're so woke?
I didn't even know what woke was when I first heard it on SNL.
I had to look it up and went, "What is it?" It's another word I don't know.
Yeah, okay, I said to somebody, I said, "What is that? Is that a medical condition?" Leslie Jones. It's so woke. Now I know. I guess I'm cool. I don't know. I think frugal is probably the best word, but I like thinking. I like FFF. I like what was the term you came up with?
Financially focused.
Financially focused. I think that makes sense. So anyway, on to the 17 things that frugal people or financially focused people don't do. Most frugal people don't finance cars. Now, of course, right? Of course. We've talked about this so many times on the TFWP. Don't go out and finance a car if you can help it. I mean, that seems kind of obvious to me. Don't finance a big car if you can help it. If you're going to finance something super low end, okay, that's fine while you're saving up money for your next car, but don't go out and finance the car if you can help it. And yet everybody does, and we've talked about this, so many times. Certainly, don't go into a dealership and roll over negative equity in a deal into a new loan. I talked to somebody that was paying, it was $800-900 a month for like a Toyota, right? And I said, well, how can that be? Well, I had this other car, and I went in and they talked me into this other one, and I thought, well, I could afford that, and I didn't want to be negative in the old one, and, don't do it. Don't let them talk you into it. Remember, that's how they put food on their table, but don't you help put the food on their table, You got to look out for yourself. Our kind of rule of thumb is buy something that's 4 years old, shop the internet like heck till you find the exact car that you want that you just can't resist, and pay cash. But I think point number one, frugal people or financially focused people don't finance cars. Number two, financially focused people don't overdraft their bank accounts. Well, I guess this kind of goes without saying, I think a lot of people these days, especially our listeners, they do a lot of their banking online. You can go on your phone, get your balance, et cetera, et cetera. But back in the olden days, Brian, you used to have to wait for a monthly statement to come to see what happened. I remember one time when I was younger, there was an insufficient check, and they bounced it back and forth like 3 or 4 times. So I had 3 or 4 different fees, and then they advanced the money because I had overdraft protection, and then they put it in like $5 increments, you know, and incurring like a $2 fee every time. I mean, it was like, it cost like $200 for that errant check. So, you know, financially focused people don't overdraft their bank accounts. I kind of think that goes really without saying. Number 3, financially focused people refuse to compromise their dietary health to save money. And instead they choose to use or eat healthy greens and legumes and keep meat to a minimum. I guess. I think they think that eating vegan is actually saving them money on their food bill. I'm not sure. You know, I think maybe it's a little more expensive to be vegan, at least the limited exposure that I've seen. What do you think?
Or if you're going to try and go, you know, to Whole Foods, Whole Paycheck, as it's known, and you want to buy organic, then that's going to add up very quickly.
Yeah.
But it does get into the question of needs versus wants. So technically, we don't need meat to survive.
Yep.
So.
But you know what? There's nothing. Good. It's such every once in a while a nice steak, right? And a little melted butter on top, a little glass of red wine, and a potato. It doesn't get any better than that, right? You know, and I think that a lot of us are trying to, you know, limit our meat consumption. I mean, certainly for health reasons. I think the body of research has shown that a diet that's heavy in meat is not good for us. And you know, 1 or 2 nights a week we try and eat just you know, vegetable dinner, vegetable and fruit dinner, something like that. Salads or, you know, steamed vegetables or whatever comes in the, the imperfect produce box.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about that a couple times. So, yeah, I think so. But the bigger point that's trying to be made here is that, you know, you don't refuse to compromise your health to save money. And yeah, okay, I get that. I think that's a little more of a perspective comment by the author, but I think it's still a valid point. Number 4, financially focused people don't carry credit card balances. My thought is, duh, right? Or no. I mean, we've talked about this all the time. In fact, one of the very first episodes that we did, I mean, a couple of years ago, you know, dump the debt, get rid of the debt. We spent 3 podcasts talking about ways to reduce debt. So, yeah, we're all about that. And obviously, someone that's financially focused is not going to be carrying a balance on their credit card debt. Number 5, financially focused people don't try to keep up with the Joneses. Now, this is a little bit tough to do because the media keeps us wanting, I think, you know. Their number 1 goal is, or at least the financially focused people, is to take care of themselves and their family and living on a bare minimum. This means that things that are, you know, large wants are maybe only seen as setbacks. I think this is really an emotional issue. I think it's a thought process issue. And I think that it's an area where we are manipulated considerably, and we just have to be mindful of the manipulation or the attempted manipulation by the media or the Joneses. You ever seen that? You see people across the street and they have a big addition onto their house and they drive up in a couple of Mercedes or Maseratis or whatever you got. And you're going, how in the hell do they do that? Working the kind of jobs I know they do, but you never know. Number 6, financially focused people don't hang out with losers. I mean, that's what the article said. And I'm going, ooh, wow. That's kind of tough, losers. Remember last year we talked about the Jim Rohn quote, you're the average of the 5 people who you spend the most time with. And I think you and I both thought that that was a pretty true comment. And I think that's why most frugal people, financially focused people, tend to hang out with like-minded friends. In fact, we did a whole episode on that. I think it was episode 207. But I think losers, man, that's kind of tough. I think that's a judgmental term,
Yeah, it's a perspective, and you choose to hang around the people that keep you going in the direction that you want to go.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that somebody who's going through a keeping up with the Joneses, phase is a loser. And I'm sure there are some losers who are very frugal. We're gonna use frugal for them.
That's
not
true.
Financially focused.
That's right. They get the old
apparently
word.
They're losers.
Yeah, they don't get the new word. I don't know. I just thought that was a little judgmental, and I think though that financially focused people just like hanging out with like-minded and success-oriented people. That's all. I don't think that's a bad thing, and I wouldn't call them losers, but. By all means, if someone's dragging you down, if someone's going, hey, let's go out and do this or spend that, or if they berate you for not wanting to go along with it, yeah, take out the trash, by all means, But let's just say financially focused people like to hang out with like-minded, success-oriented people. Number 7, financially focused people don't take fancy vacations. Now, I don't know. I think I disagree a little bit. For a couple of reasons. One, I think that we all need a reward. We've talked in the past about, hey, put yourself on this path, pursue this plan, and when you achieve an objective, give yourself a reward. And I think vacation is one of the things that can be. So I disagree a little bit. Also, I think travel enhances a person's world perspective. I think that I saw one time an article that talked about good, effective leaders usually have traveled a little bit in the world, and I think it's because they get a little bit of improved perspective. I remember we were on a trip and coming back from a couple of years ago from Europe, first time I'd ever been to Europe, and we had seen the David and priceless pieces of artwork, and we had gone through the Vatican and seen things that you didn't even think existed in Florence and in Italy, Venice, all sorts of stuff. And on the plane back, I heard President Obama say, well, we're a country that should be respected because we've been around for a little more than 200 years. And it's like, dude, I just saw the David that was carved 2,000 years ago. I saw statues. And, I think we all get caught up in our stuff. I don't want to be knocking Barack, but sometimes we get caught up in our own day-to-day stuff. And I think that travel does give us all a sense of perspective. Now, that being said, I'm also think about the time that we were at the shareholders meeting for Berkshire, and someone said, hey, how do I teach my kids to be more frugal? And Charlie Munger said, well, I think you ought to just go for it. And Buffett jumped in and he goes, but look, if you're going to go to Disney World, go for 4 days. You don't have to go for 2 weeks. So you can do it within perspective and still get the reward. You can still get the sense of perspective without going, for 2 weeks. And I don't think necessarily vacation means that it's got to be some super luxurious thing. Now, my rule of thumb is when we go on vacation, the place we stay should be at least 10% better than at home. Otherwise, just stay at home, My wife said, hey, why don't we go camping? And I said, that's a great idea. I'll throw some rocks in the backyard. You can go sleep out there on the rocks. We'll pitch a tent. I don't get that. I want to stay in a little nicer place, but it doesn't have to be super deluxe, Club Med, whatever. So I don't know. I take a little bit of a different look at that than the author. What do you think, Brian?
You can take a trip. It doesn't have to be extreme. It doesn't. I like the make it a short trip. Mm-hmm. You've got a budget. If you know that there's something coming up that you want to do, then if you're putting a little bit away over time, go for it.
Yeah,
knock yourself out.
I think it's a good thing to do, actually. So, all right, number 8, frugal people don't forget to price compare. Well, I sometimes tend to forget to price compare, especially if it's a lower price kind of thing. But, I think it's a good thing to keep in mind. I hate to buy something and then see 2 weeks later, it's cheaper. I know you're a huge fan of electronics at Costco, right? Because almost a year later, if they sell it for less, you can take it back.
Still go back. I know that they're changing some of their rules, but no, I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah, it gives you a real sense of security that you got a good deal. I'm all for getting a good deal, so I don't know, I agree. Even making price comparison, make it a challenge. make it a challenge. How about frugal people or financially focused people automatically opt out of employer-offered health insurance? Now, this one I kind of disagree with altogether. They were talking about these health cooperatives where you join and you put a few dollars in every month, and then when you have a health issue, like they'll send you money that you need for the doctor. It's kind of like a cooperative. I don't get that. I don't know that it's legally binding. It sounds almost like voluntary insurance. I've seen these a couple times. I've run across them. I don't get it, though. I'd take the health insurance.
Yeah, I don't think I think you mentioned it once, and the moment you started talking about it, I zoned out because I was like, it's so foreign to me.
Yeah, you're going,
This is, I don't need to know this, and I have so little room in my brain as is.
Yeah. I think that, we need to think more of our health insurance as insurance rather than a company providing for us. But that's a different discussion for a different day altogether, Number 10. People who are not frugal tend to not contribute or fail to contribute to their 401k or their retirement plan. Well, wow. I think that everybody should always be putting money in their 401k. If you're self-employed, a SEP IRA or 401k, so your employer has to match. But we should always be putting together some money for our retirement, especially when you're younger, by the way, because then your money has a chance to expose itself to the miracle of compounding interest. It says frugal people never stop learning. Yeah, okay, I agree. We did an episode on that, number 129. Remember we were talking about the 5-hour rule that people like, Ben Franklin and Bill Gates follow. I think people that are always trying to keep learning or subscribing to services like Audible, I think that makes a lot of sense. So instead of driving and listening to the real Don Steele on KHJ, you're listening to something that's got something that's going to stay with you. So yeah, I agree with that. Number 12, they don't even consider the idea of not having sufficient life insurance. Well, I think that's true. We've talked about that. Insurance 8 times to 10 times your annual income. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. But I think it only makes sense when somebody depends upon you for support. Recently, just as an aside, we decided to let my own life insurance policy lapse. We've had it for years and years, and there was still another bunch of years going. But we realized no one was really looking at my income anymore. We've got a house, and we've got some other things, and it's not like we were month to month on that paycheck or month to month on that money. So we said, look, let's just save it for the last 2, 3, 4 years, and we let it go. So you really only need that when someone's depending upon you, like a dependent spouse or kids or a dependent parent or something like that. Number 13, frugal people don't waste food. I don't know. I hate leftovers. I know someone who calls them must-goes. You know what a must-go is, Brian? That means tomorrow it's moldy, so tonight it must go. That's gross. Ugh, I hate leftovers. But I think maybe a better thought is trying to prepare the proper amount of food or looking for ways to repurpose, some of the food that you have or have saved for a different kind of recipe. Like, leftover mashed potatoes are really good for potato pancakes in the morning or something like that. There you go. Sometimes if we have some leftover steak, we'll cube it up in the morning and make a steak and egg burrito or something for breakfast. So, yeah, but to let it sit in there and let it go, oh, wow, I don't even remember when that was. I don't remember when that was put in there. No, I'm not into that. I don't want to take chances and go, do I wake up tomorrow morning feeling well or not?
Or not. Is it going to be a long night?
Yeah, that's too much. Number 14, they failed to keep a stockpile, people who aren't financially focused. I don't know. I think stockpiling can get a little extreme, although we do try and stockpile some things. Whenever you go to a Costco, you go, yeah, I think I need another 300 rolls of toilet paper. And you walk out with the super duper. That's their number one selling thing. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
It is their number one selling SKU, and they put it all the way in the back. So you have to walk by all the little tasty tables to get your toilet paper. True story. And they only make money on the membership fee. Everything else in the store is designed to move out at cost. Their profit.
Interesting.
Their profit is the membership fee. So I don't know. Yeah, we can stockpile some things, but you also got to park the car in the garage too, you know? People who aren't frugal pay full price. Well, I think that's true. I think that's certainly true, especially on larger purchases. Smaller purchases, I'm not so sure. You know, you go to buy a car, and you know, especially from a private party, cash is king, and they say, well, the price is X, and you go, that's great, but I have cash, so I'll give you X minus Y. Chances are they'll take it. People like the Benjamins, you know. So I think cash is king, but only on certain kinds of things, only on larger things. Can you imagine going into a Starbucks and going, I'll give you $1.25 for that latte. Before you know it, you're standing out in the parking lot going, what happened?
What the heck just happened?
I thought I was getting coffee. Here's an interesting one. Number 16, people who are not frugal forget to shop car and homeowners insurance at least annually. Now, I agree with this, but you know, this is something I didn't do. I've never really looked around. I figured, well, I'll go, you know, a couple bucks or every year or whatever. But I don't shop it. And I mean, it's like a product just like anything else. What do you think?
No, that makes a lot of sense. And especially with the internet nowadays, you can do all this in an evening and do it every 6 months.
Yeah.
And then, hey, if you want my business, this is what I'm paying.
Yeah.
I want everything exactly the same, minus $250. Yes or no?
Right. And you're right. It is so easy to shop. The Little Lizard says, you know, going with them could save you 15%. Well, okay. I guess if I had to call around and shop, maybe I wouldn't do it because you're comparing apples and oranges. It could be kind of complicated. It can take a lot of time. But, yeah, on the internet, it's so easy to shop. Why would you not spend a little bit of time doing that and seeing if there's some things that you can, you know, cut corners? I know some people that when their car gets older, I mean significantly older, they stop carrying a collision on it. So if they crash, it's their fault. Okay, the car's done. I mean, that makes sense. You know, they're going to take a little bit of risk. I got to tell you, just today, what a coincidence. This just popped into my head. Just today, we were looking at renewing our house insurance, and we were looking at our fire coverage, and the price per square foot that we had for replacing the house in the event of fire was probably less than 50% of what it would actually cost in today's market. And we said, well, wait a minute, we haven't thought about this in a lot of years. And we upped that coverage. We sold ourselves on more coverage. But when you think about it, it was like another $700 to double the exposure in the event of fire. And we just went through some fires again here this week. And by the way, I'm getting pretty damn tired of it. It's 2 years in a row. Not that close to our house, but still, you look at that and go, wow, I'm glad we took the time. And it wasn't a lot of time, but just a little bit of time to look at that and think about that a little bit. So, yeah, I think that makes sense. What about number 17, non-frugal people or unfocused financially people? UFF, unfinancially focused? I don't know. People that are not FFF, spend emotionally. Oh, yeah. I mean, I could see this. There's been times when I've, spent money in response to being stressed out or whatever, usually in response to a comment over the speaker that says, would you like to supersize that? I go, yeah, I need a bucket of French fries. But I think that, some people do it in response to a problem. And if it's a temporary problem and you're not buying houses and cars, yeah, okay. But I think some people do it. More importantly, though, I think people are really, really manipulated by the media big time. And they try and get us to emotionally spend more money. I keep going back to this American Express commercial where the couple's, luggage got lost. I guess they were coming home from a trip or something and their luggage got lost. And the guy goes, no problem. We have the American Express card. And you see him running around on the island of Mykonos in new clothes and new bathing suits and floppy hats. And it's like, what kind of a message is that? You don't know anything about these people. Did they have the money? Did they not? American Express would want to
Buy.
Yeah.
David, that's the answer. Just buy things.
Well, they want their 2% or whatever they get on that flow. So, but that's not a responsible message, and they're certainly trying to emotionally manipulate us, and certainly they can do that in a free country. We just have to be smarter and be more aware of that. I don't know, any other things you think, Brian, that frugal people do?
This has been a pretty comprehensive list.
I thought of one. Hear me out. What do you think? Frugal people tend to buy quality because they know that they'll have it for a lot longer period of time. They won't buy intentionally cheap stuff. Now, if they can get a better deal, that's different. Mm-hmm. But I think frugal people pay a little more for quality because they realize that it lasts.
I would agree with that.
I've bought some clothing over the years, and, I kind of, wince away and go, okay, I'll take it. And, like a pair of pants or some pair of slacks for the office, 10, 12 years they could last. Dress shirts, they can last for a while if there's some quality in it. Now, I don't know that you're going to get quality when you're walking out of Hollywood Bowl and the guy goes, here's a The Who t-shirt for $10, I don't think that's a frugal person. Maybe that's a cheap person, but I don't think you're getting quality outside the Hollywood Bowl from a street vendor.
No, if you're already considering your finances, you're thinking long term, then price tag isn't the only thing that you're looking at.
Right.
You're looking at how it's made and exactly what you're saying. What's the long-term goal of this purchase?
Yeah.
Is this something I only care about for 2 years, or can I, stretch this?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it makes some sense. And I think that was the idea years ago behind buying, for example, Mercedes. Mercedes in California used to be a pretty rare car to see. Now they're everywhere. But the idea was, well, they're built to last 200, 300,000 miles. There's some quality there. And you might get more return for your money rather than your car hitting 90, 95,000 and, steam's coming out of the engine compartment and you got to get a new car. So I don't know. I think frugal people will really consider quality. And I also think that when they look at each purchase, they'll look at it with a longer-term view. What am I going to think about this tomorrow, next week, the month after? Is this going to be something that I'm really going to enjoy, or am I going to, put it in a closet and hide it, or, something like that, All right, Brian, what do you think takeaways? I mean, we talked about all of the 17 things. I threw in one or two extra. Big takeaways?
Financially focused is a much better term than frugal.
You're killing me because I was just thinking that. Yeah,
and fervently or feverishly focused financially.
FFF.
FFF.
FFF. I like that. Or just 2F. Financially focused.
F
but
cubed.
It's funny that you say that. I was thinking the exact same thing. I think that these were really interesting things to talk about. But you come back to the big picture, and it's not about frugal. It's not about being cheap unless you're me. And, I think it's more about being financially focused and thoughtful, which is kind of what we've been about from the very beginning and will continue to be about on a go-forward basis.
Just one last comment, and there's another F we could throw in there if we want. Fervently, financially, and futurely focused.
For futurely focused. FFFF. I like it.
Wasn't there a 4H? Now there's a 4F.
Now there's wasn't 4F something you get thrown out of the army or something back in World War II?
Yeah,
4F.
No idea.
Way before my time, but I think I remember something about that. But this is a good 4F. This is a good 4F thing. And if you can't remember all four, just remember the two: financially focused. I think that's a wrap for today. No emails because we're out of time. We've been having too much fun. This is Dave Hagan, and you've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast.
You've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. If you have a question that you would like Dave to answer on the podcast, go to thefinancialwellnesspodcast.com. You can leave an audio message with one click of a button, or type your message into the question box. Either way, it's sent right to Dave's phone. Remember, Dave will randomly draw from the submitted questions and pick the winner of a free 1-hour personal conversation with Dave to help you achieve your financial goals. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you receive the new episode notifications, or share the podcast via the app with your family and friends. This is your announcer, Nick Appel, wishing you every financial success.